Hey guys, I hope you're all doing okay. So you're probably not surprised that I'm making this video. A rumor has dropped that Mortal Kombat 1 is having all future DLC plans cancelled and Season 2 is essentially going to be the last one. There'll be no Kombat Pack 3 and there'll be no further expansions on the story. Now this is something I actually called a long time ago. It's not like it was any insight that I had. You just look at the pattern of Mortal Kombat games and then you look at Mortal Kombat 1 and you look at the fact that MK1 didn't seem to be doing as well. It certainly wasn't received as well as the other Mortal Kombat games online, but sales wise, it wasn't doing great compared to its predecessors. Now, I know what you're thinking, and I'm not here to dunk on Mortal Kombat 1. Really, I want to talk about a couple of things surrounding the game and why, if this rumor is true, and it does come from a fairly reliable source, I've been told, why the game has essentially failed to reach a Kombat Pack 3 yet again. This is something that we saw in Mortal Kombat 11 as well. So, I'm going to go over that. But before we get to that, I'm going to read over what has been essentially leaked. It's a rumor right now. It is a rumor. We don't know for sure, but I can't really say that I'm surprised this has happened. So this comes from FateUnknown. He says Kombat Pack 3 and a second story expansion were planned. All cancelled recently. No more characters after Kombat Pack 2. A cameo or two might make it since there's been work done on them, but I don't know yet. Someone said thanks for the info. Any ideas why they cancelled? FateUnknown says Chaos Reigns sold poorly. Now there's a very glaring and obvious reason as to why this game has probably failed and why Chaos Reigns did not sell very well. So if we look at Chaos Reigns to start with, and we'll work our way backwards because Chaos Reigns was the most recent update for the game, they charged what? £40 for it, $50 for an expansion that wasn't very impressive. Now it did give us Noob Saibot, it did give us Sector and Cyrax, albeit Sector and Cyrax that we did not recognize. They were gender bent, so really there was only one returning Mortal Kombat character. And to be fair to them, Noob Saibot did look very cool, but there was one returning Mortal Kombat character and two we didn't really recognize. There's also three guest characters. Now Conan the Barbarian, Ghostface from Scream, and the T-1000 are not the worst picks in the world, but I would be lying if I said that guest characters of that proportion, as in that many guest characters, was really going to make me want to buy the expansion. I'm looking for Mortal Kombat characters, and I know the common talking point from many people online, including very prominent creators, is that guest characters will sell the game, they'll push it forward. But that's obviously not entirely true. I mean, Mortal Kombat 1 was in such a bad state, and then you couple that with the fact that they were charging for almost a full price game, which was basically DLC, it was not going to work. And we heard from people like Rumour who took the piss out of people in the Mortal Kombat community, saying we wish that we had more MK characters, that guest characters were really going to push this and these were fantastic picks. I don't really agree with that sentiment. I think one guest character per combat pack is pushing it as it is, but I would have done that if you absolutely have to get guest characters in there. So there's an overpriced DLC that came with one recognizable Mortal Kombat characters, two gender bent ones, and then three guest characters, all of which from films that came out a very long time ago that the audience may not entirely recognize. Now I recognize them because of my age, but I am not everybody else. And it seems very bizarre to me, given the type of people that play Mortal Kombat and the age ranges, that Ed Boon would opt to go down this route, but he did, and it doesn't seem to have paid off. Now that's not the only reason that Chaos Reigns didn't sell well. Obviously the main reason is the price point. The price point was absolutely absurd for what you were getting. We've also got to look at the story mode. The story mode, whilst looking like a big Netflix production, when you actually sit there and play it and you break down the narrative, feels like it has been written by a 5-year-old, and that is being generous. Chaos Reigns has one of the most nonsensical, ass-backwards stories that I have ever seen. Not only does it make little sense and doesn't really follow a line of logic, it butchers its characters. It butchers its most recognizable characters like Scorpion, like Sub-Zero. And what should have been Noob Saibot's grand entrance into the game really just turned into a joke. This is a shambolic state of affairs.
Thankfully, death won't be necessary.
Havoc has made him odious. This must be undone.
What are they doing? Unbelievable. Chaos Reigns was not received very well by anybody as far as I could see. Anybody that understands anything about how to push a narrative and craft a story, even on a basic level, can look at Chaos Reigns and be like, this is not a good product. On top of all of these problems that I've named, the game already had problems. We were told of this warrior shrine, which turned out to be this disappointing element of the game where you can highlight who the strongest warriors are online. and they're immortalized on there. Now, this would have been fine to launch on day one because it's kind of a throwaway mode that you're only really going to see the top players ever populating and maybe a breakout star here and there. But it's not really for the casual player. They're not going to care about that. They're never going to be on there. So to hide this mode and basically make it inaccessible, to drop it a year later as if it's this big monumental moment, and it's just that, really left a sour taste in people's mouths. Now, if you dial it back a little bit, this game was plagued with issues from the outset. The online barely worked, King of the Hill was not working as intended, there was no crossplay, there were glitches all over the place. Every time they updated the game to fix the glitches were, as far as I could see, getting worse. When they would update the game with new characters, they would mess with the balancing, they would mess with cameo balancing. There was a lot of this flavor of the month going on where they update the game with a new cameo, and I don't know, maybe it's like Farah this time around is the strongest cameo and the whole meta shifts to that character. One time it's Chameleon, the whole meta shifts to that character. The game started to become very stealth for a lot of people. Now, I have heard from a lot of people in the scene that MK1 has gone in the right direction and it's a lot more fun these days. But it's a little bit too late. And if this rumor is to be believed, then that would be true. It really is a little bit too late. You have to release games in a full coherent state. And look, it happens to our favorite games. I would sit here and lie to you if I said that my favorite games have not gone through this as well. Just look at Sparking Zero. I'm not ashamed to admit I glazed that game like crazy. I was talking about it like it's going to be the second coming of Jesus, and look what's happened. The game is plagued with issues. The community is very, very angry, and you just got to call a spade a spade. Now, do I want Mortal Kombat to fail? Of course not. Mortal Kombat has always been regarded as one of the big three: Tekken, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. I know in more recent times the more hardcore players regard Guilty Gear to be in that big three, but historically Mortal Kombat has always sat in that sort of lineup where you've got Street Fighter at the helm as the granddaddy of all fighting games. Tekken is like the most well-respected 3D fighting game, and to a lot of people they're like the most complex one, and it's just super cool, right? Tekken's always had that cool factor. Then you've got Mortal Kombat here, which is really the most dominant fighting game in the entire genre, you could say. It's literally the most dominant fighting game in the entire genre. So to see its fall from grace, it doesn't fill me with joy. Obviously, my channel really kicked off me shitting on the game, but I wasn't shitting on it because I really enjoyed the fact that my formerly favorite fighting game franchise was absolute dog water now. I was just calling it like I see it. Mortal Kombat set a very, very high bar for a very, very long time, and that bar seemed to dip with MK11's release and then crashed into the ground with Mortal Kombat 1. And you just gotta call it how you see it. At least that's how I see it. And I know a lot of people didn't like my take, but my takes resonated with a lot of people, and I guess that's really where my channel got its major start. So I guess I owe Mortal Kombat 1 something, but for Mortal Kombat 2, I don't want to go into it shitting on it. I want it to be good, and I hope that NRS can really learn from this. And there are a lot of things that they have done wrong in this game that they can look at Mortal Kombat 2 and be like, okay, we need to slow down. We need to take our time. Before the game got announced, we heard that leaked business call from Warner Brothers saying there's going to be a very aggressive push and aggressive marketing, and we blinked and the game was basically out. They released that game so quickly and it was very obvious that it was rushed out. The game was broken on release. For a game like Mortal Kombat, world recognized, major recognition, you can't release a game like that and expect people to not go crazy when the game is shit. And no amount of cameos or guest characters is going to fix that. You can put Homelander in there, you can put the T-1000, you could put anyone in there. If the foundation of the game is not solid, people are not going to buy it. I have made endless videos on my channel, literally endless videos, talking about how Mortal Kombat has really gone down the shitter since MK11. And it's my hope that MK2 or whatever they decide to release is going to be good, because they can't continue down this road. They need to look at what has worked in the past and scrap what has failed them in the present. Don't gender bend characters. The culture is shifting, people don't like it. Leave established characters alone. Create new characters, characters that people can relate to. It's not like stories can't feature prominent, strong female characters. I mean, I just watched The Penguin, which for my money is one of the greatest TV shows I've ever watched. And outside of Penguin in the show, portrayed by Colin Farrell, the lady that portrays Sophia Falcone, I forget her name, forgive me, is absolutely incredible. And I would say she almost steals the show. If it wasn't for the insane character work with Penguin and how sometimes you want to root for him, but the show is crafted so well that they make a very, very clear point whenever you do feel like rooting for him that this guy is evil. You get over to Sophia Falcone, you're like, wow, this is actually a fantastic character. And I honestly loved her character. She's one of my favorite depictions of a villainous character on a TV show ever. So it's not like we don't want female characters in prominent roles. It's just the way you do them, NRS. And that goes for a lot of other American developers and publishers. You just don't seem to really understand what the audience wants. When Sector and Cyrax were being released, a lot of people were saying, oh, it's because they're women, and it's not. You got to be real low IQ to think that. Now, of course, there's going to be some sexists out there. There's going to be some bigots, obviously. But you didn't see Penguin getting that pushback. Everyone is calling Penguin a masterpiece. And if they're not calling it a masterpiece, they're saying it's damn near close. And it had a very, very prominent female character in it. So if it can work there in the DC universe, which you guys are familiar with, it should be able to work in Mortal Kombat. The problem is how you're crafting it. And character image means a lot. It really does mean a lot. So stop messing with legacy characters. But the other thing that you need to really understand, I think this is something people don't really understand with the state of fighting games in 2024, is a lot of the time you hear people saying, oh, everybody's whinging, everybody's crying. Back in the day, we had these goofy ass games where things were broken and things weren't working. And I always look at people and I'm like, do you think the year is 1992 or is it 2024? Do you think that with the release of fighting games over time, that the player base became smarter, they became more competitive, they became more demanding. They needed things to shift in a way where games weren't broken to accommodate for the fact that players are becoming more and more locked in. When I was growing up playing fighting games, I've told this story many times on this channel. I was very difficult to beat on Soul Calibur 5. There were very few people that could do it. It was only the top of the top guys in Europe. And as time went on and fighting games got more and more popular and Soul Calibur 6 came out, I was suddenly met with more and more players who were more and more locked in. They were looking for mechanics to exploit. They were looking for new ways to play. The bigger the audience grows, the more demanding they're going to be. So you might be able to release a game in 1999 and never update it and it's broken and people liked it then. But in 2024, you can't do that with fighting games. And that is why you're seeing a lot of these fighting games suffering. Because I think these developers seem to think that we're back in the year 2000. Fighting game players demand more of these fighting games now, and that is no more evident than in Mortal Kombat, who has been riding its own coattails for a very long time. And we can finally see now, if this rumor is to be believed, and I'm banking on it being real, I'll be honest with you guys, then it's time for them to really lock in and pay attention. Now, my best advice to you, because you've done well in the past before with games that are very hardcore and very difficult to play, like MKX. MKX, you wouldn't say is the most casual fighting game in the world, but it can be played at a casual level. Same goes for MK9. What I would suggest doing is getting people in there that understand fighting games, understand the intricacies of the systems that make them enjoyable, but also make them complex so people want to come back to them. Get people in there that understand that, but understand the Mortal Kombat flavor. You don't have to make it like Tekken or Street Fighter. You put your own MK spin on it, but make it a game that has nuance, has complexities, but is easy for the casual player to pick up and be like, okay, I just want to hit some buttons, I just want to have a good time. But give it that ceiling that you can continue to push so people want to come back and play, because MK1 really didn't have that. Now, of course, you get more skilled players than other players, but you would be lying if you said that MK1 had the level of depth that previous MK games had. It just doesn't. It also, for me at least, doesn't really have that staying power or that fun factor. The numbers have been pretty consistent on Steam and on some of these websites that track console numbers, although we don't know how accurate they are, but at least on Steam, they've consistently been bad. They did get a spike when Chaos Reigns came out, but it mostly just returned to normal. It wasn't a spike that made you turn your head either. And for a long time, MK1 was losing to MK11, so there's a serious problem there, where MK1 could ride the coattails of MK11 for some time. I don't think we live in that age anymore. MK11 is the most successful Mortal Kombat game ever, and that was coming off the back of the other most successful Mortal Kombat game, which was MKX. They're both in the top 10 best-selling fighting games of all time. But again, you can only ride your own coattails for so long. It is time for a change. Now, some people have been saying Injustice 3. Let's pivot. I'm not against that. I think Mortal Kombat needs to be put on ice. I think it's time to put the franchise down and let people miss it. I think it's time to really step back and go back to the drawing board and think about what you're going to do for the next game. You can't release another game in this state. Nobody wants to see that. Now, there are loads of roads that you can take Mortal Kombat down, of course. Now, it's going to be controversial for some if it goes down the 3D road. It'll be controversial for some if they remain in the 2D realm and they remain in the same way that MK11 and MK1 has been done. And I wouldn't really necessarily go down the road of using Injustice 3 as a tester ground for the next Mortal Kombat game, because you don't want to leave even more of a sour taste in people's mouths. You want Injustice 3 to really bang so people are like, okay, they get it. The next Mortal Kombat game, it's gonna hit because they understood this one. You're making a fighting game in 2024. People demand more. You can't get away with the things you got away with 20 years ago. That's one thing people need to understand. People are online now. They're sharing tech. They understand how to exploit things. They understand how to use mechanics, how to break things. You need to stop and think about what you're doing. It's not all about the Netflix style storyboard. Although those things are very, very welcomed, and you guys were the pioneer for those things, you need to stop and think about the fighting game mechanic. Maybe look at your competitors, which I know that you guys have done. You've looked at Tekken and you've taken its replay feature, which I believe Tekken took from Guilty Gear, if I'm not mistaken, or some other game. It's good to borrow from other games that are doing something well. Look at what worked for them. Look at what failed for you. Look at how people received your characters. Look at how people received characters in other games. MK1 did a pretty good job of its roster, you know. There was a couple hiccups here and there. Sector and Cyrax certainly didn't help things, but for the most part, people were pretty happy with it. So the 3D era characters were positively received. Cameos were so divisive that I would drop that completely. If you're going to do anything even remotely similar to that going forward, it has to be 2v2 or just leave it 1v1. You need to make sure your online mode is working on day one, and crossplay is absolutely a must. Sparking Zero launched without crossplay. I think it has really hurt the game, and I think it will hurt any future fighting games that are coming out. Mortal Kombat's really loved by casual players, so you need to have some casual modes in there other than story mode. Please never bring back invasions. It was absolutely abysmal. It's an embarrassment to everything that Mortal Kombat stands for, and you guys should be ashamed for even including that in there. What I would suggest you do is bring back conquest mode that you had in Deception. I think people really enjoyed that. Look at the mini games that people really enjoy. They've been talking about them for a long time. Combat Kart or whatever it was called, Chess Combat, those sort of things, people really enjoyed them, and they help when you're marketing a game. People may not play them for the long term, but it certainly helps when you're bringing the game back. Your visuals have always been pretty good, so I've got no doubt that when you bring out another Mortal Kombat game, they're going to be good as well. But you just really got to think about the fighting game mechanics. Don't be afraid to look at other people and see what worked, like I said. And don't be afraid to call in people that understand fighting games to help you understand where to optimize things, where to let something be a bit more free, and where to not let certain systems just overwhelm the game. It's a sad state of affairs, I'll be honest with you guys, to see Mortal Kombat just fall from grace, really. If they don't get their act together for the next game, we could go into like a Mortal Kombat drought, because Warner Brothers is not going to deal with more unsuccessful franchises. And now Warner Brothers has a tendency to just, I don't know if I can say this, if it might get me in trouble, but they haven't been doing the best lately. And the stuff they put out is not impressive, at least on the video game front. Or NRS could do what people have been asking them to do for a very long time and drop Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks 2 and absolutely wow people with an adventure game. And maybe that will win over some goodwill. We could really sit here talking about Mortal Kombat 1 all day and everything that went wrong, but we've covered it in length. And we all sort of knew when we got our hands on this game that it was not going to last a long time. It wasn't going to stand the test of time. And like I said, the leaker is apparently a very well respected and very well known leaker that normally gets things right. And even without this leak, I had said this before in previous videos and on previous live streams. This game was not in a good state. It feels like the developers have kind of lost touch and lost that magic that used to make Mortal Kombat really special. You know, you see Mortal Kombat and you think, oh, it's over the top 80s/90s fighting game, you know, with this like almost horror supernatural theme and all of this really cool techno music, and it's just not there anymore. It's really trying to be the MCU, and the MCU's not been doing the best either. It's time to reevaluate. I know you've reset the universe a billion times right now, but this universe that you've got, the way you've constructed it, Chaos Reigns and everything that it did, it's not really a good one. Now, there are ways to turn it around. There is the option to reset it again. I don't know how much that's going to piss people off, but there is always that option. But you can really turn things around. You can change the theme of the game and really push things in a positive direction. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think this rumor should be believed? Again, it is a rumor, but given the signs, I'm willing to bet it's probably true. Obviously, we'll update this. If it's not true and there's a season 3, then hey, we're wrong, you know, we hold our hands up. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think MK1's on its way out? Do you think it deserves this? Did you see this coming? And what do you want from a Mortal Kombat 2 or whatever they decide to call it? Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning into the video. I'll catch you very soon. Take care and peace.